Open up the show with this from Siege. Siege writes, Kevin, did Jaden Daniels get hurt on the roughing the passer play in the fourth quarter? He seemed like a different quarterback the rest of the way. Uh, that is interesting because I also had someone else say to me, and actually just the default was, well, after he got hurt, and this was in the midst of a conversation with a friend, not, a reporter, not somebody with the team or anything like that. Remember, the play in which he got roughed came with 8 minutes and 52 seconds left in the football game. It put the football, by the way, at Chicago's 39-yard line with 8:48 to go, and they were up 24-22. This is a key moment in the game because you have a chance to eat clock, get more out of a drive in which you really haven't been stopped all night long. For the most part, you've stopped yourself all night long. And they went with a 1st and 10 run to Krosky Merritt. Jaden then threw incomplete to Jalen Lane, and then on 3rd and 10. He was incomplete on that play again on 3rd and 10. First of all, let me just say this as I went back and watched this. Interesting play calling because of the type of 4th down team they were last year, meaning you're at their 39-yard line. It's 3rd and 10. How about a play that just gets you, somewhere near 4th down and go for it territory. Let's try to get into 4th and go for it territory. And they didn't, and they ended up punting. Now, they punted, and it was an effective punt by our guy Tressway down to, inside the 10-yard line, and the Bears then backed up. There was a sack, and then, of course, the 2nd and 16 to Zaccheaus. My God, that is really one of those plays that I guarantee you we'd be talking a lot more about because it would have come after the Swift touchdown, which obviously was a major turning point in the game as well. But can you imagine on 2nd and 16 from their own 3-yard line, if Zaccheaus takes a pass over the middle with, by the way, Bobby Wagner in coverage and goes 97 with it? Put it this way. He's going to at the very least, pick up 30 or 40. And maybe he gets caught. You guys can tell me kind of and give me a memory from last year where Zaccheaus pulled away from anybody, with great speed. It's not like there's great speed on our defense to begin with. We understand that. But the idea that potentially Zaccheaus, every time I watch this play, I just cannot believe that he is that wide open. But back to Jaden for a moment. They punted on 4th and 10 at the Chicago 39-yard line. On 3rd and 10, you've got a play where I don't notice Jaden limping or Jaden looking any different. But what they did come with constantly, on all night long and on that particular play was blitz pressure. And he is under siege immediately, which, by the way, happened a lot on Monday night. They did not handle the blitz very well offensively. So he's looking, though, if you watch the all 22 on, both the 2nd and 10 is a short pass that he gets tipped, remember, by Montez Sweat. And then the 3rd and 10, they're looking for something more downfield, but they don't have it because of the immediate pressure. And, you got basically 4 verts with a check down and no chance. He didn't look hurt to me. He couldn't escape that pressure because it was immediate. So it's hard to get a real feel for it there. But the bottom line is, in going back and looking to see if he was hurt, which I didn't find any evidence of, I didn't like the play calling at the 39-yard line. Go get yourself something short, simple, and give yourself the options on 4th and inside 5. A field goal would have been a possibility there for 27-22. Or you have lived with Jaden Daniels in fourth down situations, 4th and 5 or less. And that would have been the part of the field, the 34-yard line of Chicago, where you may have gone for it. But Siege, I did not see any evidence really that Jaden was banged up after that low hit by Brisker. I did not. And I don't think he was asked about it after the game, and I don't think Quinn was asked about it yesterday. If he pops up on the injury report today, we'll know. But I didn't see a major difference. They only had the ball back the one more time. He did take a sack, on that on their last possession, but they ended up getting that first down when he dumped it off to McNichols on 3rd and 13, and he ended up picking up that first down. And that was, of course, before, a couple of plays before the fumble. Oh, there's also a scramble for him on 2nd and 9 where he scrambles for 8 yards on that last drive before the fumble. It's actually the play before the fumble. But, man, they had so many opportunities. So many opportunities. We got more today. I've got an upon further review that I want to get to sometime here in this opening hour. We'll give you guys a chance, a day after to weigh in with thoughts. And I think the question really that I want to pose is, 6 weeks into an NFL season, now you can really start to, identify what your team is. Doesn't mean that things can't change dramatically. Injuries obviously impact that. But for the most part now, we have a sense of what this team is right now. I know Philadelphia was 4-2 last year and looked terrible, and then all of a sudden they ended up becoming the best team in the league by the end of the year. And that's possible that you get that kind of a change. But more times than not, we start to approach the midway point of the season, you start to know what your team is. So what is this team? How does this team proceed the rest of the way? I'll give you my answer because I think it became clear to me in this last game what this team is. And I will get to that shortly. But no, Siege, I don't think he was hurt. If he pops up on the injury report today, you were right. And it would, and more likely than not, maybe it was that hit by Brisker. But he did scramble for 8 yards on their final drive. I just didn't like the way they handled that drive starting at the 39 after the roughing the passer. Not criticizing the play calling, but they didn't handle the pressure up front. They didn't do it all night against the blitz. You would have liked to have seen him get some yards there so you had a 4th down option other than punt. They got the ball back after they punted, luckily, very luckily, to get the ball back. Let me get to it. What do you got? So on Saturday, Delaware State, who is coached by Deshaun Jackson in his first season, I think you guys know that they are coached by Deshaun Jackson, and Clinton Portis is the running backs coach at Delaware State, where right now they are by far and away the number one rush offense in FCS, football conference subdivision football, D1 AA. They're in the MEAC with Howard and Morgan State and South Carolina State, etc. They're in that particular league. They are the number one rush offense in college football at that level, averaging 331.1 yards per game on the ground. That's not, a misspeak. 331 is the actual average. But on Saturday, in their game, in Delaware State's game, in which they played South Carolina State, Southern Connecticut State they played. They rushed in a football game for 608 yards. 608 yards. Deshaun Jackson's the head coach. CP, Clinton Portis, is the running backs coach. They're the number one rush offense in 1AA college football. They are averaging 331 plus yards per game. And on Saturday, they rushed for 608 yards in a football game. They won the game 70-23. James Jones rushed 3 times for 158 yards. He averaged 52.7 yards per carry and had 2 touchdowns. They had 3 backs go for 100 or more, and another back that had an 81-yard run for a score. 608 yards. I'm going to keep track of this because this could be the beginning of a Deion situation. Jackson State to Colorado, Deshaun Jackson from Delaware State with his staff, Clinton Portis included, to some, big job next year or the year after. Now, they are 4-3 as a football team. Jackson State, I think, had more success, also had a couple of more years. They've lost a couple of very close games, and they still have, their MEAC schedule, most of it to go. But they can run the football. I always thought that Clinton Portis would be an excellent coach. And we'll see if he goes beyond just a running backs coach. He obviously can coach running backs, and they have maybe a big advantage up front. But 331 rushing yards a game, 608 last week with 3 backs at 100 or more. We'll monitor Delaware State going through the rest of the season. The MEAC schedule really starts now for them. There are 6 MEAC schools, and they finish with the 5 MEAC games. So we'll see where they finish in that league. Howard's in that league, as mentioned, but they are 4-3 overall. They opened up with, a game at Delaware. Delaware's, one of those powers at that level and have been. They play a couple of D1 schools, a couple of bowl division schools. They had Colorado in week 2, Delaware did. But they lost that game 35-17 in the opener. But Delaware State, even against that level, rushed for 200 yards in the game. And it was a close game heading into the fourth quarter. Delaware State, Deshaun Jackson, Clinton Portis, they know how to run the football. That's for sure. All right, I did want to quickly talk about last night's baseball game because I watched the Dodgers-Brewers game too. And Yamamoto, the pitcher for the Dodgers, became the first pitcher in 8 years in the postseason to pitch 9 full innings, a complete game. It was actually riveting to watch because he gave up early home run in the game, a first inning Chiriot home run, leadoff home run. And after that, he gave up no runs and 2 hits and walked 1 batter the rest of the way. It was such a precision attack, and they outlined it during the game last night and even this morning. This guy Yamamoto can hit anything. He'd be deadly in darts. Every single, a target that Will Smith, the catcher, gave him, he hit over and over again, just barely in the strike zone where the ball was borderline unhittable. And the Brewers didn't hit him. 9 complete. In this day and age, for a pitcher to pitch a complete game, it's unheard of. Again, the last one, Verlander, back in the American League Championship Series 2017, in Game 2, he struck out 13 in a 5-hit win over the Yankees. It's been 8 years since we've had a pitcher in the postseason pitch a complete game. I understand what baseball is, but I'm old enough to remember complete games. And last night, it was awesome to watch Yamamoto pitch. Awesome. I do know, and I'm learning this because I don't follow a lot of the baseball during the regular season like some of you do, that the Dodgers have, a real weakness, and it's their bullpen. So they're trying to steer clear of the bullpen with excellent starting pitching. Snell pitched game 1, pitched 8, and gave way for Trinan in the 9th. And by the way, that was a bit dicey because Blake Trinan, former Nat, has not pitched well in the postseason, and he got it. He walked a batter and then got the last out in what was a close game. But Blake Snell struck out 10 and 8. So I was watching early this morning the MLB Network, the post game show. I don't know who those guys are. I know Pedro Martinez is part of the group. That's an excellent studio show. Max, look up who the host of that is. That guy's excellent. Also, I'll just mention Brian Anderson, who does the play-by-play on TNT, and he does a lot of other play-by-play. He does some college hoops. Does some NCAA tournament games. He is so good. Does anybody else recognize that? Am I late to the party on Brian Anderson as a play-by-play guy? Do you know who he is, Max?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I've been watching the games. I haven't. He hasn't jumped off the screen to me. That's how I'll put it.
He's excellent at everything he does. College basketball, I've noticed him before. In fact, I think he called one of Maryland's games in the tournament. It may have been the buzzer beater by Derek Queen, and if it wasn't that, it may have been the Sweet 16 loss to Florida. But he is excellent. He's unbelievable doing baseball. But the studio show is great. I mean, look, TNT's longtime NBA show, best ever in terms of studio shows, and now it's moving to ESPN. But the MLB postgame, and I've watched a lot of it during the playoffs, is a really, really well done show. I like it. I mean, look, for me, I like baseball this time of year, and I end up learning a lot about these teams now, because I'm not paying attention as much during the regular season, especially when our team is so bad. I think I'd know more about some of these other National League teams in particular if the Nats had a good season. Of course I know Ohtani. Of course I know Betts. Of course I know Freddie Freeman and Christian Yelich. There are names in this series I'm very familiar with and players that I'm very familiar with. Max Muncy, by the way, who had several good games against the Nats for the Dodgers in the multiple playoff series against Washington. He hit a homer last night in the sixth inning to give them a 3-1 to give in the ninth inning to give the Dodgers in the seventh inning to give him a 3-1 lead. He became the all-time home run postseason leader for that franchise, Max Muncy. But man, he has been over the years a clutch October performer. But the studio show is great. This series is great. I guess the Dodgers, if their starting pitching holds up the rest of the way, I would assume that they, have a really good shot to end this series. They're going back to LA for the next 3, I believe, up 2-0. I guess the key for the Brewers is to get to their bullpen. We did see Clayton Kershaw's bullpen appearance last week against the Phillies. That was hard to watch. But baseball's good. Seattle won the first 2 in Toronto. Man, that crowd's good. The Toronto crowd. We get one game today. We get the American League, and then I think we get 3 straight days of 2 games per day. Tomorrow night, by the way, 41-year-old versus a 40-year-old in Thursday night football. 41 versus 40. 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers against 40-year-old Joe Flacco. And if you don't know, Flacco's first game for Cincinnati, all you got to do is listen to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase describe it. Higgins said, man, that dude can sling it. He basically threw for 200-plus yards and 2 touchdowns in the second half, and they were a completely different offense in terms of what their capability is than they were with Jake Browning. But this will be the oldest QB matchup since we had Brady and Breeze going at it 3 times in the Bucs Super Bowl season with Brady. They met twice during the regular season, and then, of course, they met in the postseason. They played each other, remember, after Brady and the Bucs came here in 2020 for a playoff game against Old Taylor H. And then the next week was New Orleans, and that was a really good game. And that's the last matchup between 40-year-old quarterbacks before tomorrow night. That is a big game in the AFC North, the division that right now really is the worst division in football. I mean, that is a change, clearly. But Pittsburgh at 4-1, and with no Joe Burrow, Cincinnati's in second place with 2 wins. And then you get Baltimore and Cleveland at 1-5 each. If Cincinnati at home can pull off a win tomorrow night with Flacco against Rodgers, they're going to be in it, and there's still no word as to when Joe Burrow will come back, if he'll come back, but they made this trade because they thought Flacco could keep him afloat. And they've got 3 straight home games against Pittsburgh, the Jets, and Chicago. And to keep them afloat, they got to win 2 out of the 3. They got to be somewhere around 4-5 after the next 3 games. And they'll be in that division race, especially if one of them is against Pittsburgh. I was looking, by the way, at just some of the, they make these schedules, obviously, in April. And it's tough, man, because Cincinnati, this is the first of 3 primetime games that they still have left on the schedule. There's going to be some flexing involved down the stretch. They've got, Pittsburgh here on Thursday night. They've got a Thursday nighter on Thanksgiving night. I guess that can't be flexed, right? I'm pretty sure Thanksgiving night can't be flexed.
No, I don't think you can flex Thanksgiving games.
Yeah, so Cincinnati-Baltimore is the Thanksgiving night game. And then they play Miami later in the season on a Sunday night. Unless Burrow's back, that is flexed right now. But you've got some of those situations, and this is where you can't predict these things, like Baltimore and their remaining schedule. They still have, prime matchups left. Miami was given some of these games. I mean, the Dolphins are an underdog at Cleveland this coming week. I'm going to go out with my bold prediction for the week. I think that don't be surprised if this is Mike McDaniel's final game as head coach of the Miami Dolphins. With all the crap that's happening with, Tua's disastrous press conference calling out teammates for not showing up for a players-only meeting, they're 1-5, and they're going to Cleveland as an underdog. If they lose to the Browns and Dylan Gabriel, I predict he gets fired. I think that's your lead story on Monday morning, is that Mike McDaniel is fired. By the way, they have a Thursday night game against Baltimore. They've got the Madrid game against us. They've got a Monday nighter against Pittsburgh. They've got a Sunday nighter against Cincinnati. There are a lot of flex games coming up, as we get later in the season. They can't predict Baltimore, Cincinnati to have the injuries and to stink. I don't know why they gave Miami all these games, but they did, and they're going to have to fix that. But there's my, don't be surprised if we do that segment occasionally on this show. We have it planned to do every week. We just don't always get to it. Don't be surprised if Mike McDaniel's coaching his final game in the NFL on Sunday as a head coach for the Miami Dolphins. Cleveland's a 2.5-point favorite. Cleveland is favored in a football game over the Dolphins at home. By the way, Washington's line against Dallas is now down to 1.5. It was 2.5, down to 1.5. And I do think that these next few games, you can justify Monday night being about the turnovers more than it was about the defense. But if they were to lose a 35-31 game to Dallas and then, a 37-33 game to Kansas City, I don't know that we're just there yet, but I don't think we're that far away from changes defensively. And by the way, that's wide-ranging. Personnel changes, and yes, maybe even play calling changes. I don't know anything, and I'll tell you the same thing I've been told, multiple times, most recently last week. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of things. But you go out there and you put up, an offensive performance that's worthy of winning, which you did not do because of the turnovers on Monday night. But if you take those turnovers away and you lose to Dallas's offense 35-28 or 42-35, and then it happens again, I think all of us at that moment would be wondering why changes aren't being made. Of course, it's the NFL. They could go out and lose on Sunday 13-10, and we could be blaming the offense. It's the way the NFL works when you least expect it. Logan Paulson will be our guest at 11 a.m. on this show. We'll go NFL buy and sell when we come back. Want to do some NFL buy and sell here? Let's do it.
We can. Get the computer working?
No, I don't have very good computer work right now. It's not working very well.
I hear everything's
You gonna hit
computer.
that sounder?
I can. I was waiting to see if we were. I was waiting to see if we were going to do it because of the internet. But let's hit it.
Do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it does. I don't know how they did these shows back in the day without the internet. It is not easy to do without the internet. And I have no internet for some reason right now, although the stream's working. So tune in if you want to the Team 980 YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. So I'm buying the Atlanta Falcons right now to be a legitimate contender for the postseason. I'm a big Michael Penix Jr. believer. He had that terrible game against Carolina. He's now put back-to-back games together that have looked very good. Man, he's got some weapons, and he's got an offensive line. Drake London and Bijan Robinson are legit stars. Drake London has really, you saw it last year when Cousins was playing before Penix Jr. got in late, when they were kind of out of it. Drake London had by far his biggest season last year with Kirk. And now with Penix Jr., he is thriving, as is their run game. You heard all these complaints about they're in the pistol too much. It's too easy, too predictable. Yeah, what's pretty predictable is if you give the ball to number 7, Bijan Robinson, he's got a chance to take it to the house every single time he touches it. They also have a really good backup running back in Tyler Algier. They've got a defense that's on the attack with Jeff Ulbrich as their new defensive coordinator. I don't know that Atlanta catches Tampa, but Atlanta's going to be there with Tampa. They've already lost once. They lost the opener to Tampa when Koo missed a field goal before they cut him loose in the opener. The Falcons are legit. And by the way, that's not good for us because if we get into one of those tie-breaking situations at the end of the year for what is going to be a crowded situation in the NFC playoffs, I'm convinced of it. We are going to see a lot of teams in the running in the NFC. You're going to have division races that are close in the NFC West, in the NFC East, in the NFC North, maybe with Green Bay, Detroit. And then for wild cards, I mean, there are going to be 2 teams out of the West that are going to be in the running. There's going to be at least 1 out of the South that'll be in the running. There will be at least 1, if not 2, in the North. Every team in the NFC North is above 500. Above 500. I read something where if Washington had won the other night, there would have been more 4-2 teams without an undefeated team through 6 weeks of the season in NFL history. The Patriots are 4-2. The Bills are 4-2. The Jags are 4-2. The Chargers, Broncos, Eagles, Lions, 49ers, Seahawks, and Rams are all 4-2. I mean, you just have a lot of teams bunched up now. But the fact that Atlanta has a chance, and I think they are legit, to be in the playoff mix, that's not going to be great for Washington. You don't want Chicago to get into the mix either. Division is the goal, obviously, and then you don't have to worry about tiebreakers with anybody in terms of wild card spots. But Atlanta has a very interesting Sunday night game coming up at San Francisco. The 49ers are once again experiencing an unusual high number of injuries in their season. This is a big football game in the NFC. Falcons at 49ers Sunday night. And then they've got the Dolphins. They've got, they still have the Saints a couple of times. They've got the Cardinals. The Falcons are going to be in this thing all season long. And I know people are raving about Drake May. And by the way, he's played great. And I like Drake May. I did not like him as much as Jaden, nowhere near as much. Didn't like him as much as I liked Caleb. I didn't. Didn't like him as much as I liked Penix Jr. But I like Drake May. Sabah, that's for you. Sabah likes to say that I never, I downplayed Drake May. I always said I like Drake May. I think Drake May's got a chance to be a good quarterback. I just never would have taken him before those 3 guys. That's all. She likes Drake May, not the biggest fan of some of the others. She just likes Drake May, which is fine. And I get every single nugget that anybody says about Drake May, video or tweet, sent to me in my direct messages. I know you love him. He's good. The Falcons, I am buying as a playoff contender. And I'll go a step further, as a playoff football team in the NFC. And that could be as a division winner, too. I'm not handing that to Tampa Bay quite yet. It's a shame they didn't get the opener against the Bucs. They had a chance to get the opener against the Bucs. But the Falcons are legit. And by the way, let me just add Bijan Robinson. He's in the conversation for MVP right now. What are you buying?
Man, it's tough. It's a tough market out here because a lot of the teams were kind of entering that separation point. But I'm going to buy. I bought Sam Darnold last week. Give me some Jackson Smith and Jigba, because if Puka Nakua's injury that he suffered this past week is as serious as some may say, because I think he's dealing with like an ankle sprain of some kind. Could be. He says he's going to miss some time. Could be a little bit like the CeeDee Lamb thing. If Puka misses multiple weeks throughout this season, JSN has a good shot at winning Offensive Player of the Year. At the beginning of that game, when Seattle was playing, Sam Darnold had like 117 passing yards, all of which were to Jackson Smith and Jigba. He has cemented himself as the wide receiver 1 in Seattle. He took that next step. A lot of people had some questions going into this offseason. Give me all the JSN stock in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's great, but we knew that, right? We know how good he is.
I think there were questions about him being able to step up.
When you like go out on a limb and say, Igbuka is going to be a superstar quickly, and Tampa is going to win, is going to be the 1 seed. That's your best prediction so far here 6 weeks into the season.
So
and
far,
you made that before the season started.
So far, so good on them.
Yeah. Jackson Smith and the Jigba is a player that we all know is really good. I guess you could come back at me and say, yeah, everybody knows Bijan Robinson's good too. You know what, though? Before Washington played Bijan Robinson a few weeks ago, and I was saying, just for those of you who only watch our team, understand we are playing maybe the best running back in the league this week. And, I had people say, oh, come on, dude. Derrick Henry, Saquon, McCaffrey. No, Bijan is in that conversation. And I love his running style and love the fact that he is a complete football player. So you could come back at me and say that was sort of obvious too. But I would say that I'm not sure a lot of our fans before we played Atlanta knew how good London and Bijan were. I do want to buy one other quick thing before I sell something. I want to buy the Carolina Panthers, okay?
They were also in my consideration for being
Hear me out.
Then I looked at the schedule.
Yeah. I want to buy the Carolina Panthers as a team that basically was predicted just a few weeks ago to be in the running for the number 1 pick in the draft next year. As a team that wins no less than 8 games and is actually a team that is mathematically alive for an NFC playoff berth late into the season. I'll tell you what, man, Canales knows what he's doing. He can coach quarterbacks. He can coach offense. They run the football. They are physical up front. Bryce Young is thriving with a running game and an offensive line, and they get after you defensively. They really get after you defensively, which is, by the way, I'll bring this back to Drake May. The Patriots hammered the Panthers a few weeks ago, and May didn't even have to really throw the football. He was like something like 13 of 16 or something like that on the day. I mean, it was an absolute avalanche by the Patriots. Now, in that game, there were, just a couple of, just barely missed big plays for Carolina. But it's crazy how in the NFL a couple of weeks ago, the Panthers are terrible. They're going to get the number 1 pick. It'll be them or the Jets or, or Saints. And now they're a 3-3 football team with the Jets up next. They're not a bad football team. They're not a bad football team. They're going to be in it for a while. That's the other thing I wanted to buy. Go ahead. If you've got something else to buy, go ahead. If not,
so this is a little bit of a buy, a little bit of a sell. I saw Ben put out something last night that was a little bit actually really intriguing to me. So Brandon Coleman's been out and being held out for it's not health related, but play related. I could definitely see Washington putting him in some sort of trade package with the deadline coming up.
Yep.
And one team that is a little bit has kind of struggled on their offensive interior, the Miami Dolphins. Cole Strange has been fine, but their left guard's a little tough, and I think Brandon Coleman could fit in. Fit in there just nicely. But Washington needs a wide receiver. We could move a few picks around as well. Give me Jalen Waddle. I'm going to buy Jalen Waddle for Brandon Coleman and picks before the trade deadline. That's what I'm buying.
Yeah, I mean, Miami's definitely going to be more of a seller than a buyer. The way you started, I thought you were like they're looking to add. But no, Jalen Waddle, yeah. I mean, Washington needs another receiver on this team. But what they really need is they need somebody that can get stops on defense, whether that's in coverage or as a pass rusher. They need that. All right, I'm going to sell something here that is going to go against the way I think about this team fully healthy. And I'm doing it because there's just something that's a bit off with them, and I can't figure out what it is. I think the Rams are so talented, and fully healthy. I've been saying all year they're one of the 3 best teams on paper in the NFC with Philly and Detroit. Washington not that far behind. I was saying before the season started, the rosters aren't really that comparable. Why are they struggling with, in all of these games? They blew the big lead against Philly and lost. They beat the Colts, but they were really outplayed by the Colts in that game. They lost to the 49ers, and the 49ers came into that game completely decimated injury-wise. And I'll tell you what, they went to Baltimore, where Houston a week earlier put 44 points up on the board against the Ravens, and the game was 3-3 at halftime. 3-3 at halftime. They won the game 17-3, but they basically needed turnovers to score. I don't know what's going on with them. They one of their touchdowns was after a fumble, they set them up at the Ravens 20-yard line. Other than that, they punted a bunch. They're off for some reason. Now, Nakua got hurt in the game and left the game for a while and ended up with his least productive game of the season, and that was a factor. But how did Baltimore, who couldn't do anything offensively or defensively the week before? I mean, Derrick Henry went for 5 yards a carry against that Ram defense. They rushed for 180 yards against the Rams. Okay, they only put up 3 points. That was because of the turnovers. They just had 3 turnovers in the game that hurt them. That game was much closer than the final score indicated. I don't know what's going on with the Rams. They play the early London game on Sunday morning against Jacksonville. The loser of that game is going to look a little weak coming out of it. But the Rams are not hitting on all cylinders right now, and I don't know what the answer to that is. And it makes me believe, by the way, that Seattle, a team that you've been on, is definitely a possibility to win the NFC West, for sure. What are you selling?
Selling? I kind of have another buy.
Go ahead.
I'm going to take this buy here. So some stats have been coming out from the Monday Night Football game last night. Separation score has been kind of the top of the conversation, or at least top of my mind as of late. And there's one guy who had really good separation score last year, is on Washington, and had a great separation score against Chicago.
Luke McCaffrey.
That's right. Give me all the Luke McCaffrey stock possible. He's an incredible kick returner. I just need the offense to give him a shot. It's really frustrating to me when people say he can't separate, and then you look at the numbers and it's very clear, black and white in your face, that he's getting open. It's just not materializing for him. It's going to break eventually. I will ride or die on this train until the wheels fall off. Give me all the Luke McCaffrey that is out there. I want to be the number one. I want to overtake Denton as the number one Luke McCaffrey supporter in this building.
At least you're getting some anytime touchdowns.
Finally.
All right. We'll go Washington, upon further review, I have something that I didn't talk about in my breakdown of Monday night's game that I want to talk about when we come back. We'll do that next. Logan Paulson at 11 a.m.
All right, happy Wednesday, everybody. Here's what's happening. The Washington Commanders are bringing in former Titans wide receiver Treylon Burks for a visit. Burks was released by the Titans after suffering a collarbone injury in the preseason. Now he's fully healed and visiting his potential suitors. To postseason baseball, the Dodgers, they beat the Brewers by a score of 5-1. Yoshinobu Yamamoto throws all 9 innings, giving up one solo shot from Jackson Chourio in the first inning. Then he locked in, and the Dodgers bats rolled from there. The Caps, they get the win in overtime versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. Logan Thompson saved 17 out of 19 shots. Caps win in overtime 3-2 on a goal from Jacob Chikrin. That was on our sister station 106.7 The Fan last night. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Logan Paulson coming up at 11 a.m. Had a conversation with Logan yesterday. I want you to hear it today on the show. So I think in going back, and I don't think I emphasized this enough yesterday after the game, I was, by the way, felt it on Monday night, man. Pissed. Really, really pissed that they let that one get away. Especially considering what's coming up. It's one of those games I hope we don't have to look back on and say, you had to get that one. You had to get that one. And still, going back and watching that final defensive drive was repulsive, truly repulsive. I don't know how Dan Quinn did it. I don't know how Joe Witt Jr. went back and looked at the Bears' final drive, a 3rd and 5, and it's just way too easy to Loveland for 6 yards. And then to watch DeAndre Swift run it right off the edge, 2 different runs of 10 and 15 yards. When they're running the football, they're trying to make you use your timeouts. They want a walk-off field goal attempt. They don't want to give the ball back to number 5. They don't want to have to, have a super long field goal. They want clock burned, timeouts burned, and there was zero resistance to the Chicago Bears in a spot in which it would have been nice had the defense actually stepped up for once in a year and a half and bailed the quarterback out after his mistake, the fumble. But it was literally, it looked like they laid down. Of course they didn't. And that, I guarantee you, made them throw up in their mouths watching that final drive. A 10-yard run off the edge. They pitched it to him. I mean, they were so confident that they took the risk of just pitching it to him in the backfield and just untouched for 15 yards on a 2nd and 12 after Caleb Williams, got sacked there by, stopped on a scramble. I mean, that was hard to watch. But the thing that, upon further review, that I didn't mention enough yesterday, and I should have, I said Jaden was really good other than the turnovers. It wasn't just that he was really good. I think what we saw on Monday night was an example of something we've talked about for many months now. An example of Jaden Daniels elevating average talent around him to offensive success. It's hard to say that on, the day after or 2 days after a game in which he had 2 critical turnovers that cost them. The last one really cost them the game. Now, it's possible that the Bears could have gotten one more possession after a field goal or after a punt and gone, if they didn't fumble. Real quickly, too, upon further review, Krosky Merritt on the exchange, if it's a smooth exchange, I don't think he gets the first down there on 3rd and 1. There was penetration. It's why they were able to recover the fumble so quickly. They were in the backfield. The defensive penetration didn't cause the fumble. The exchange, Jaden not having a grip of the football, caused the fumble. But the reason it was recovered so quickly is that they were there, and I think Krosky Merritt gets nailed for no gain or even a 1-yard loss, and they're faced with like a 4th and 2 in that situation. But what was really evident in going back and watching the game is that, the emphasis on adding talent. Tunsil's had a good season so far, okay? Debo's had a good season. Debo didn't look right to me the other night. And that's part of the reason I'm mentioning this, is that the other night they didn't even have what appeared to be a fully healthy Debo Samuel. And you've got Chris Moore and Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey, and they're fine, but you don't have anything great around you. You still don't have, arguably your second best offensive lineman, Sam Cosmi, in the lineup yet. By the way, I think he'll be back this week. That's my prediction. I think we learned that today from Quinn, is that they are going to activate him and that he's going to have a chance to play on Sunday. And I would guess that he goes in for Wiley and that Chris Paul stays right where he is. A, right guards his position. B, Chris Paul has played too well. I don't think they're going to pull him. But I think what we saw the other night, it's hard to say this after 3 turnovers and 2 of them by the quarterback, but that's the example of how great Jaden Daniels is. He didn't have much around him. Certainly nothing elite around him. And yet, this was a team that was able to generate a lot of offense, points, didn't require the other team to soil themselves to get points. They moved the football drive after drive. They just had the turnovers. The turnovers were crucial. The interception was bad. It was a late throw. But they have no chance of winning that game Monday night without Jaden Daniels at quarterback. His performance, if you just take one of the turnovers away, especially the last one, was an A-, B+ performance. He was great. He was incredible as a scrambler. Had an 18-yard run, 15-yard run, rushed for 52 yards in the game, almost all of it scrambles, because the Bears took away all of the option runs, the zone reads. And there really weren't any designed runs. There wasn't a quarterback draw. There wasn't a quarterback counter in the game. A designed run is that. An option run is the zone read where he's got the option. They were playing back and Jaden with sometimes 8 in the box, and they took that away from him the other night. Not all teams have been able to do that. The Bears did that. Give the Bears credit. They changed during that bye week. They played defense completely in a different way than they had played prior to the bye week, which was always something we contemplated. The numbers were the numbers, but what if the Bears play it differently? They should play it differently, and they did. But Jaden Daniels elevated that team, and one mistake at the very end, and then, no resistance from the defense cost them the W. But we saw it all last year, but we also had Terry McLaurin, a high-end number 1 receiver on the field. And they didn't have any of that the other night. And yet that offense, as it did in L.A. against the Chargers after the first 2 drives, is elevated to a level in which they can definitely win games with average talent on offense. They can. Biggest concern, though, is what they are defensively. I talked to Logan Paulson about that yesterday. You'll hear that conversation next. want to tell you real quickly before we get to Logan Paulson about Foley Mechanical. So we had some HVAC system issues recently, and we called Foley Mechanical. Dan Foley himself came out and dealt with us directly, which, believe me, he and the fact that he did that was impressive to both my wife and to me. Dan owns 100% of the company. It's not a franchise. It's not some big private equity firm. He controls the quality from the equipment to the people he hires. His team, professional, skilled, sharp. They were great. Foley Mechanical is a full-service heating, air conditioning, hot water, and boilers. They do it all, and they're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat, a real specialty. They work across D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help like ours did, or you just want it done right, call Foley Mechanical or go to FoleyMechanical.com and tell Dan that I sent you. All right, Logan Paulson and I had a conversation, which I recorded yesterday for today's show. I just started off by asking him, when they turn on the film of the game Monday night, what will Dan Quinn and his coaching staff see?
Well, I think the thing about this game is that you don't need to be like a ball knower, quote unquote, to kind of understand where the deficiencies were, right? Obviously, you got to protect the football, got to tackle better, got to play assignment sound, run defense. And I think that's it. And I think, when you talk about some of the issues that have maybe plagued the team over the last couple of weeks, don't wear capes was something Joe Witt Jr. said a couple of days ago, right? And that I think applied very specifically to the pass game. And then last night I felt like it applied to the run game, right? And then obviously, I think on the whole, the team tackled relatively well, but then there's that big missed tackle that Quan has. Didn't turn the football over, even though there was 2 opportunities to do it. And then the Washington Commanders offense, tough interception in the red zone, ball out with Bill in a short field, and then obviously the fumble in the game. So it's just everything that kind of those high-level platitudes that we on this side of the analyst community talk about, where it's like protect the football, tackle, play fundamentals, and like, you win the game. Like, that's kind of what it feels like here.
I think we all know, as NFL fans and you as a former player, that these games are really like their own entities. It's week to week. This is the nature of the league. And what you see one week isn't always what you see the next. But now that we're 6 weeks into the season, there is something that concerns me as a takeaway from last night and really all 6 games. Is there anything that you can kind of grab a hold of right now and say, this is a problem if they don't fix it?
Yeah, I think at the highest level, it's just a general consistency, right? Like, how they say, like, good teams don't beat themselves. A lot of times they're just talking about consistent football, right? They don't turn the football over. They don't give up explosive plays. And there were points last year where I thought that the offense was incredibly consistent, just executing on third down, executing on first down at every kind of turn. And they haven't kind of reached that same level of offensive consistency yet. Now they've been very, very good. Don't get me wrong, but they're lacking kind of that next step ability that they showed last year. And defensively, I think they've, again, shown flashes. I think the addition of Kinlaw, Payne on the interior has been outstanding. I think Dorrance Armstrong has been a revelation in terms of his sack production. But they seemingly, in those big moments, for 60 minutes, they can't always get it done. So if you're looking for in my opinion, the thing that separates them from like a good to a great team, it's the lack of consistency. And again, a lot of that I think can be explained with some of the injury situations, guys stepping into new roles. But it's something that I think needs to improve over the next couple of weeks if they want to get to, the dance at the end of the year.
I want to get more specific on last night's game, but for me, the thing that I think I got most frustrated about last night, and I think it's a larger concern season-wise, is I think we're watching for a second straight year a defense that just isn't very good. The results that were positive came against Russell Wilson's Giants, Geno Smith's Raiders, and an absolutely decimated offensive line against the Chargers, against Green Bay, Atlanta, and then really a Chicago team that's not great offensively. it's been problematic. And last night was the first time that they got shredded in a way in which they got shredded a lot last year, which was on the ground. But they've continued to have coverage, issues. And if they're not getting a pass rush, that's going to be a big issue. And I'm wondering if you feel the same way. Like I'm looking at, the Cowboys, Chiefs, Seahawks, and Lions in the next 4. Last year when they were bad on defense, you got Jake Haener in New Orleans. You got, Andy Dalton. You got Cooper Rush. You got, everything kind of broke in the right way for them. I'm concerned that the defense is bad again. You say what?
I think that's a really interesting perspective, and I think it's important just to remember, and you know this, but like that defensive production is directly correlated to the level of quarterback or opponent, right? So strength of schedule is almost a better indicator in terms of defensive production year on year than the actual personnel on the field. Now, that being said, that doesn't quell any of your concerns because the strength of schedule this year is better. I will say that I have been pleasantly surprised with some areas, and they've kind of taken turns being surprising, if that makes sense. So, the defensive line for the past couple of weeks has been impressive. I think there's times where the coverage in the back end looks good, which gives me some level of optimism that they'll be able to figure it out and kind of get it to gel as long as they're on the same page and communicating well. So I do think they're talented enough in the back end, but they haven't had that talent in the back end line up necessarily with the talent in the front. And it's kind of been defensive line carrying, secondary carrying. And I'm hoping that, again, as they move into season, they spend more time together, guys are getting healthier, that they have an opportunity to kind of say, maybe we're not a top 10 defense in the NFL, but maybe we can be a top, 15, 16, 17 defense in the NFL. And with the offense producing and being as productive as they've been, that should be fine. Now, that I think is going to be a big step compared to last year, given the strength of schedule. But I do think they've gotten better in enough spots where it's a possibility. Maybe not a likelihood, but it is definitely a possibility.
One of the things I'm just starting to wonder is I do think they've got good players. Like you said, I'm like, Kinlaw's been a really good addition. I mean, through 6 games, I see the difference he's making in the interior of that defensive line. He's better than John Allen was last year, in my opinion. Armstrong's, he got it going at the end of last year and through the postseason, and that's continued this year. I still think Frankie Louvu is a real talent. I think Trey Amos looks the part. He's young. It's a position that sometimes needs experience, but I think he looks the part. And so then I get to, so why, against the decent teams they've faced offensively, have they struggled and only feasted on kind of the bad teams? And I put the Chargers into that category just on that day because they were a mess coming into that game on the offensive line, and it got even messier last Sunday when they played them. And it leads people like me to ask the question, is it more personnel or is it more coaching, scheme, play calling? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think it's probably a combination of both. There are times in the game last night, just because it's fresh in my mind, where, they're running kind of a outside zone Wanda to the left, and there's one of the players gets their hat out of the gap and isn't, they're in a 7-man front versus a 6-man blocking surface. It's very clear, at least to me on film, who should be fitting where. And then all of a sudden one player doesn't fit there, and then it's a 10-yard gain, right? We've got a toss crack to the perimeter. And so to me, in that example, the scheme is correct, but the player is kind of letting you down. He's not doing what he's supposed to do, right?
Yep.
And then there's other examples where I'm saying, what the scheme is asking this person to do is very, very challenging and can be very difficult. I think back to the Green Bay game where they run those four verticals, right, in terms of getting it called, getting it diagnosed in terms of who has who and that kind of man-to-man coverage look.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a combination of both. And I do think that, when I look at the Atlanta game, I felt like Joe Wood Jr. was a little bit conservative. I loved how he called the LA game. And I love shades of the game last night. I think they did a really good job. But the one thing I think is the formula for success for this team and really for any defense in the NFL is first and second down efficiency. And then because I do think on third down, you mentioned Frankie Louvu, Von Miller, Dorrance Armstrong, Kinlaw, Payne, Johnny Newton, they can rush the passer now. And maybe there's not one guy in particular in there that sticks out, but with the pressure packages that Joe Witt has developed you see what they can do to a team on third down. And then I felt like yesterday they didn't really get into a lot of third and long situations. And when you look at a team, when you look at this defense, they struggle the most when they're in third and medium, right? Because they can't get into the pressure packages they want to get into. They can't blitz the way they want to. It exposes the back end to longer downs, which again leads to explosive plays. So I think that's the thing I would kind of key in on is like it in terms of shortcomings. It's probably a little bit of both. I think it's getting more consistently better, which makes sense. They're just getting more reps together. Joe Witt's getting more reps calling it. But also I think like to your initial point, stopping the run on first, second down is got to be a bigger priority for them because again, like they are really good when they get that done. You know, talk about the games they were able to win. The Giants were able to stop the run well last night against the Chargers. They're able to stop the run relatively well. So I think that's part of the formula for them defensively to be productive and to be effective.
You know, specific to that last night, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but one of the clues is just that Jordan McGee, after playing, you know, some snaps last week, was on the field for one of them. So I am assuming that against what looked like a lot of 11 personnel for Chicago, you know, for those that don't know, one back, one tight end, three receivers, that they were in nickel, you know, more often than they've been. And that was a problem for them last year as to why they weren't a good run stopping team. Was that part of the problem last night?
You know, to say that it's the personnel decision, I think is kind of, again, is limited in terms of scope because there's times where the person making the mistake is a defensive tackle, and there's a time where the person mistake is a linebacker. You know, there's a play where two DBs are fitting outside a puller. Like, everyone kind of took turns making plays, and it's kind of funny to watch the film because you're like, if you were to watch Javon Kinlaw, just as an example, because we were talking about it earlier, you're like, man, he's playing really well, but here's a play where he's maybe out of his gap or maybe he's too high on his rush, and it leads to a big play. But on the whole, it's a productive game for him. And I think it's just interesting to me when you watch defense and how one person can make a mistake one play and it leads to a 10-yard gain. A different person can make a mistake the next play and it leads to a 10-yard gain. And so I think that's where it's like finding that level of consistent play from the whole group where it's not individuals, it's the group playing well together. That's something that has to come to the forefront. And that's why I think, to me, like the consistency element is so important for this group moving forward.
What percentage of takeaways is random versus created?
Oh my gosh, I love this question because it's something that I don't know if there's a really good answer to. But to me, it's one of those statistics when you look at it year on year, there's an incredible amount of variance. You know, one year a team's leading the league and the next year they're 22nd or whatever. And so I do think that you can kind of tip the deck in your favor to lead to turnovers when you can create consistent pressure, when you can create tight coverage, and you can force hurried throws and inaccurate decisions from the quarterback. I think that's where you can kind of tip the deck in your favor. So when you look at teams that have high pressure rates, usually there's some correlation to turnovers. Now, it's not one-to-one, obviously, because the number one pressure team isn't always the number one team with interceptions, but usually they're a really good defense. So that's where I'd say, like, when you look at the games where they've been productive in terms of turning the football over, it's games where they've been able to apply a certain amount of pressure. Again, the LA game is one that comes to mind as my case study in this example. So I think that's going to be something that, again, is it going to lead to turnovers? No, but does it tip the deck in your favor? Yes. And I think even last night you saw shades of that. I think you see a good pressure package from Joe Witt Jr., and then you get some free rushers on the quarterback. And Caleb Williams threw a potential interception to Frankie Louvu. He threw a potential interception to Mike Sanderstill. And obviously those aren't actualized, but I think it just shows you the importance of that pressure disguise element in terms of creating those turnovers. And again, you got to actualize them by catching the football. But I do think that shows some of the variance that you're talking about. You kind of create some of your own luck, but again, it's still a luck-based statistic.
Yeah, it is. I mean, ironically, Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn, and Dallas had multiple years in a row of being way up there in takeaways. They also had Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, you know, and I don't think there are players necessarily at that level on this defense. By the way, isn't tackling a part of it too? When you're a good tackling team, a physical tackling team, maybe, you know, a gang tackle defense that can lead to more opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously people think of like the collision leading to turnovers, and I think that's definitely part of it. But to me, if you're a consistent well coached, well versed in terms of tackling football team, again, it makes you more efficient on first and second down. And if you're more efficient on first and second down, I get into more third down, more second and long situations, more obvious passing downs, where I can ramp that pressure up, where I can be more aggressive with my pressure philosophy. And again, like, to me, it's not one-to-one, but I do think the tackling element is huge in that regard. And really, like, over the course of a game, like, you might give up a bunch of first downs, but as a defense, you're playing for that third down opportunity where you can shift the tide and kind of win that situational football battle.
All right. Offensively last night, yes, you said it from the beginning. Anybody could literally not watch the game, pick up the box score and see -3 in the turnover margin, and that's essentially a 95% tell on who won the game and who lost the game. So we recognize that the 3 turnovers were critical in the game. Ironically, if they don't turn it over that last time, they probably win the game 24-22. Let's just I want to talk about the last turnover in particular, because Jaden said it was a lack of focus. You were there. The rain was coming down. The ball was wet. I made an observation over the summer and maybe even after the Giant game. And I said, the one thing that this guy's great at everything. I don't want him to be too casual, and he's very laid back. He's never, I don't want urgent's the wrong word. He's never frazzled at all, even when they're down 13-0. But I do sense occasionally there's a little bit of a casual element to his game. I'm wondering, A, if you've noticed that, and B, if that's the kind of thing that contributes to a turnover like that last night.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I think I actually like that he's not super wound up. I've played with quarterbacks that
I agree.
Really wound up, and it kind of stresses everybody out. So I kind of like that feature of him. I do think there are moments, like with any player, where it's just I don't know if it's a focus thing. It's just like you're not as locked in as you can be. You know what I mean? So I guess it is a focus thing to a certain extent. And there are times where I feel that from him, but I feel it from every player. Like, I remember playing, the best player that I ever played with was Trent Williams. And there'd be times where he'd be like, I'd come to the side and he's like, man, I gave up a pressure. And I'm like, well, what happened? He's like, I just wasn't locked in. And it's like, what do you mean you weren't locked in? It's 3rd and 10. Like, you should have been locked in. He's like, yeah, I wasn't as focused as I needed to be. And so I think there's an element of that for every player. And there are times I think you feel that a little bit from him. But again, that's not an indictment of him. It's just the constant struggle of being a professional athlete, or being a high-level professional in any aspect of life, right? Is maintaining a razor sharp focus all the time, because the razor dulls over the course of, uses and time. And so it's like, I think these are great learning moments for players like him and other players, in terms of concentration drops or pressures like we just talked about, or missed tackles like we can talk about in the case of Quan, where you just got to kind of focus up and say, hey, I'm going to learn from this. It's not going to happen again, and move forward.
What's in my mind when I say that is, over the last several years, when you watch Mahomes, there have been games in which you've watched Mahomes and you've said, my God, he's bored. That's why he's just trying to create some kind of, crazy play. He wants some sort of, he's not hitting the read, the guy that's open. He wants something dramatic to happen here. And I don't want Jaden to go down that path. Because, first of all, it puts him at risk. And secondly, it puts the play at risk, even though he's totally capable of improvising and being great. But anyway, that first pick, what did you see there?
Yeah, what's funny is I was in Fletch was legend of the game, so he had to be down the field. So I was up in the booth for the first quarter, or first half, and then went down to the field after that. But in the moment, I thought it was the right decision from where I was sitting in the booth. But obviously, when you watch the film, you see kind of how clouded the picture gets. And again, like I've said this in a couple of different spots, one of the things that sticks out to me in the moment, I like how aggressive he's being. It's cover 3. You've got kind of three vertical concept there. I don't know if Zach's supposed to push across the field. It looks like he kind of maybe stopped his route a little early. But someone's holding the safety, someone's holding the corner. You're working Deebo Samuel, your best player, on a hook defender, right? And so I like in the red zone the aggressive mentality. I think that's the right way to look at that. Again, I coach high school football. If I'm talking to the quarterback, I say that's where the ball should go. I like how aggressive you're being here, but let's learn from this mistake moving forward. We can check the football down to the back in the future if it's a little cloudy or it doesn't distribute the way we think. But on paper, I think that's where the ball should go. And in real time, I had the same thought. Again, once you get to the film, you see how cloudy the window actually is from the end zone view. But I like that element of him, and I like that he owned it afterwards. I like that he came out and said, hey, I missed the opportunity. I was a little bit too aggressive, and it's something I can learn from. Because ultimately, that's what you want him to. That's exactly what you want from the quarterback. You want him to know where that line is, where he can reach, where he can stress, where he can really press, and where he has to pull back and be a little bit more conservative.
You don't think so? You're not saying that the aggression was there. So I thought he was just late getting to it. I've seen him make that throw. I've seen him make that aggressive throw and fit it in there. I thought he was late. Was that not what it was?
I mean, maybe a little late. I mean, it's, you kind of like I think maybe saw it a little bit late, but I think, again, I think that's where the ball should be going. Is he late? Did he put enough velocity on it? I think they kind of go hand in hand there in terms of, if he's really early, he's okay. If the ball's got a little more juice on it, maybe he's okay. And also, I got to say this too. I think it's a really good play by the hook defender, Brisker. I think he did a great job getting depth, not being kind of pulled in by the eye candy of the flare to the offensive left there. So, maybe it took late. Maybe he could have put a little bit better ball out there. But again, to me, it's a learning process for him, and I'm glad that he was so reticent and willing to take that in that moment.
Have you noticed that the RPOs in this league are just getting flagged for ineligible downfield so often? There's such an emphasis on it. The difference between college is 3 yards down the field in college, 1 yard in the NFL. I don't think he could have, on that RPO throw to McCaffrey, been any quicker out of the decision to throw it. And somehow, while he was downfield, it almost seems like watching a lot of these games, they are really trying to almost legislate the RPO out of the game.
Yeah, I don't know if they're trying to legislate the RPO out of the game. I think it really correlates more for the NFL to the style of run you're going to use. And so what I mean by that is, when you're running an outside zone, as an example, it's really easy for guys to chip and then get up to the next level. So if you're running an RPO off an outside zone, you run the risk, especially from the pistol, you run a risk that by the time the ball is getting there, guys are already moving to the second level of the block, right? And so we've seen, I think back to the Tampa Bay game last year, where they're running a little bit more kind of gap scheme concept, where guys can really sink on double, sit, and drive out. And again, I think he completes a post, or like a glance to Terry in that game, and there's not even anybody past the first yard of line of scrimmage just yet, So I do think it's maybe kind of changing the way you call that run associated with it. Because before, you could do all sorts of crazy stuff. You could do, like the outside zone. You could do pin pull stuff, getting guys to the perimeter, and guys could be way downfield, and it didn't really matter. But obviously now they're cracking down on it. And I do think there's other runs you can get to that are maybe more friendly to the RPO. And there's also coaching points. I remember when I was in Houston and we were basically killing the league with this RPO setup. And Laramie Tunsil was actually the left tackle. And there was a game where they called him multiple times. And that week in practice, they just said, hey, man, on this, when you hear this word call and you're uncovered, I need you to take a 1/1000 count before you go to the linebacker. So a little bit of it's also just changing the coaching parameter, too, on the type on RPOs specifically. And so I think it's style of run. I think it's the coaching points. I think all that stuff can be cleaned up. But I do think the league is being much more fastidious with how they're legislating that.
Yeah, at the college level, it's almost unstoppable if there's a talent.
Oh my
advantage.
gosh! Yeah.
I mean, it's and it creates the Big 12 64 to 58 games because they ride out that mesh for 2 seconds to suck everybody up, and then it's like somebody's just wide open. Why do you think the zone reads didn't work last night?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the way the Giants played them, obviously, in terms of box counts. Yeah, said Giants. Yeah, Bears, thank you. In terms of box counts. And so what I mean by that is they played to 12 personnel. They basically played like an 8-man box. So think of 8-man box. You got your four defensive linemen, your 3 linebackers, and then some type of safety rotation week. And so that does a couple things. One is it makes the angles to the double teams a little bit more challenging. And 2, it lets that overhang player kind of play both. I can now play run away because I have depth, time, and vision to the back. and also I can play out if the quarterback keeps it. And the other thing they were doing quite a bit of, which I think was a smart move by them, is they were running a lot of they'd blitz kind of the edge defender, then stunt the line two away from the tight end. And so you got a bunch of single blocks weak and covered up these linebackers who could now play with vision to the football because everything was kind of naturally funneling back to them based on the line stunt. So I think it was two-pronged. One, defensive front structure, 8-man box, big deal. And then obviously the line stunts they were running on first, second down really kind of made it easy for them to get to the defense, get to that zone read element of the offense.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely noticed a lot of 8-man boxes, especially when they, had Trent Scott in the game, et cetera. Back to defense, just it's an arching kind of question about, your experience as a player and a coach. When you are an offensive coordinator and the other team doesn't have a game-wrecking defensive, front seven player, a TJ Watt, a Myles Garrett, or it doesn't have, a true cover corner that's like you got to avoid, a Pat Surtain, name your, corner. How much easier is that to game plan for when a team doesn't have either?
I mean, it's so much easier. Think about it. Like if, you spend so many times banking reps with your day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5 installs, and you just rep them and rep them and rep them. And when you don't have a player that needs to augment those installs to account for him, you've got thousands of hours of banked reps, banked looks, and you can just go run it. Like if I'm, as a player, for example, if I had to go block DeMarcus Ware, like we had to develop new blocking schemes to account for him. We developed a new run to block DeMarcus Ware. You know what I mean? Because of how good and how effective he was against the run. When I was here with Kyle Shanahan. And then in high school, when you're coaching, like you can just call your base stuff until you get that game-wrecking player. And then you have to think about every single time you're calling a play, where is that guy going to line up and how is that matchup going to affect this play? For example, you mentioned the J.J. Watt thing. Like you had or Aaron Donald's maybe a more prescient example. Like we would spend our third down blitz meeting talking about our protection rules, which were totally geared around that player. So we couldn't use our banked reps anymore. We had to use that week's repetitions to kind of say, this is how we're targeting, this is how we're going to release, this is the chip help we're going to provide from the back if there's no free rusher on Aaron Donald, who's an interior pass rusher. Like it's a lot, and it does a lot in terms when you have that game-wrecking presence in terms of making the other team account for that skill set.
For this team right now, and I won't mention like names of people maybe they were interested in, but if you could go back to the offseason and add either a great pass rusher, a great corner, or a great second receiver that's also like a number one, which of those three would you have added?
I mean, to me, I think right now the league's going in the direction. It depends on how great this player is. Obviously, like the Micah Parsons edition, just as like an example. Yeah. I know that happened later, but like I would do that in 2 seconds. You know what I mean?
Maybe here are the examples. I'll give you names: Trey Hendrickson, T. Higgins, or I don't have a corner that was available, but a really top flight corner.
Yeah, I mean, I think. In that example, because I know the trade capital associated with what Cincinnati Bengals for axing, I'd probably go with the receiver, I think, in that situation.
Yeah.
Just because I think for cost, for what it would do for Jaden, especially given the current receiver depth, I got to give Jaden his props. I know we talked about the fumble quite a bit. Like watching the All-22 and watching him elevate this offense and elevate this group of skill position players is really tremendous. And Cliff's doing a great job also, but everyone talks about the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels comparison. Like I see Jaden elevating an offense, and I see Caleb being kind of guided by the offense in a way.
Yeah.
So like he deserves a ton of credit. But I imagine what he could be is if in this second group of players who are all playing well and playing definitely above their skill set, there was just more talent here. And I bring this up as a player who was a second, third string player, and I made this analogy before, but I'll make it again. Is like if the offense is built around Jordan Reed running choice routes and he gets hurt and all of a sudden Logan Paulson has to run those choice routes. Logan Paulson is an NFL player. He played for 10 years, but that's not what you want him doing. And I kind of feel like that's where the offense is at the moment. And so it's kind of like now having more skill there, I think would just help him be, even greater than he already is.
I mentioned it in the open to the show that I think going back and thinking about, the two turnovers, the last one in particular, devastating to the outcome of the game. There's no doubt about it. The defense could have stepped up and, helped him out, bailed him out for once, given how many times he bailed them out last year. But the idea that they're, essentially moving on every drive, they're scoring on a lot of drives. He's playing at a super high level. I mean, I think I would have, if he doesn't fumble, if he doesn't butcher that last handoff, he's a B plus A minus in the game. He's a B plus worst case in the game. And there was all these questions over the summer with the Terry contract. I'm like, you know what? He's going to elevate everything around him. And I think we've seen the last 2 weeks. That's true. It would be better with Terry healthy. It'd be better with Noah Brown healthy. It'd be better with Sam Cosmi healthy. But they're capable offensively of winning and being good enough to win games as long as he's out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it speaks to, I mean, how good he was last year. And the fact that he's even in the same ballpark as that is still really impressive. And again, I agree with you. If he doesn't turn the football over the end there, I think you're talking about, wow, what a fantastic performance from Jaden Daniels. The third down efficiency, the decisions to scramble, the touchdowns. Again, Cliff deserves a lot of credit for some of those too in terms of scheming them up. But it just, he's a special talent. And again, it just feels unfair in a way that the one mistake, and again, you've covered a lot of sports, Kevin, you know how this is. The one mistake is going to define his performance from this game, and people forget how good he was in all of the facets. But that's the nature of sports, right? It's the most impactful play you make last, and in this game, it was the fumble that swung the game.
Yeah, and I think, the issue with it is it's probably one of those things that is a little bit controllable. I know the ball's wet, but he said it, lack of focus, and you gotta be prepared for that. Last one for you, because you talked about Cliff and the scheming up of certain things. Why does that play that Luke McCaffrey was wide open on, the fake bubble screen, and then the receiver slips out and why does that seem to work every single time at every level of football?
It's the best play in football. One of the best plays in football, I will say, outside of run plays, which I adore. But it's just one of those things that just messes with your primal instincts as a defender. And I think the way Cliff set that up was absolutely perfect in terms of you put Deebo Samuel at the focus of that play. You say, we've run a bunch of bubble screens to him. Luke's been blocking these bubble screens. He's going to kind of work up like he's blocking. Everybody's eyes go to Deebo, and he's wide open. So I do think the play design itself is one of those fun ones that kind of seemingly works all the time. But also I think that the other element there is that Deebo has earned that respect from defenses. And even though he wasn't super productive in the game, you see his impact in terms of how defenses treat a talent like Deebo Samuel.
Thanks for doing this, as always. We'll talk again soon. They need to get this one Sunday in Dallas, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure, Kevin.
Logan Paulson, everybody. He's so good. Does a great job with everything that he is involved in. All right, when we come back, there is an interesting number through 6 games of this season as it relates to Washington's offense that I want you to know. I will share that with you. I will share that with you when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. So I was looking at something when I was going back and looking at the game yesterday that I wanted to share with everybody, because it seemed to me in watching the game that Jaden was under pressure a lot, that he was facing more blitz pressure than he had faced at any point this year. So the latter is correct. He faced the highest blitz percentage against the Bears that he has faced all year. And in fact, it was at over 41%. 41% of the dropbacks were blitz pressured, by the Chicago Bears. What does that speak to? Well, it speaks to the fact, because they hadn't done it a lot in their first 4 games. It speaks to they really weren't concerned with covering what was behind the blitz pressure. For them, it was about getting to a quarterback that maybe they deemed to be less mobile with the brace coming off the injury. I don't know. But a lot of it has to be about, hey, we're not really concerned about what you have, which makes the results, 19 of 26 in the game for 211 yards. He had some pretty impressive advanced passing numbers in the game. The pressure rate on him, just so you know, the blitz percentage was the highest he's faced all year, at over 41%. The pressure rate, though, and this tells you how great Green Bay was in that Thursday night game, was the second highest, next to the Packer game, which, by the way, had the lowest blitz percentage against him this year. The blitz percentage against the Packers was 22.6%. So they were a 4-man rush pretty much that entire night. 41.7% was the percent time that he got blitzed on Monday night against the Bears. But the pressure rate was better with the Packers with their 4-man rush, not by a lot, but by a bit in terms of their pressure rate than the Bears' pressure rate. He was under duress on Monday night and with extra man pressures, and I don't think they did a good job. The fact that he was only sacked 3 times, and I think one of them was a scramble back to the line of scrimmage, is exceptional. He had big-time scrambles as well, had an 18-yarder, had a 15-yarder in the game, rushed for 52 yards. By the way, of the rushing yards, 51 of them were scrambled rushing yards. He only had 1 yard in total in design/option runs. Next gen, they should break it out. Designed and option runs are completely different. A designed run is a quarterback draw or a quarterback power or a quarterback counter, which they run some of that stuff. But the option runs are different. That's when he's got the option on the zone read to pull it and keep it or to give it. They're 2 totally different runs. A zone read is not a designed run. It's an option run. Next gen doesn't separate between those. But the other night, almost all of his yards were scramble yards in the game. And by the way, it was his number 1 scramble yardage game of the season. 51 of the 52 yards were via scramble. But he saw second highest pressure rate and the highest blitz rate of the season in any of the 4 games that he's played in. Keep in mind, he has played against better teams, flat out better teams, with the exception of Atlanta in his games. Chargers, Packers, the Bears. He missed the Falcons game. Played against a Giant defense who was pretty good. The Giant defense was pretty good, and we've seen that since. Now, the other number that I wanted to give to you is that Washington now leads the league in opponent blitz percentage at 37.1%. So the Bears' percentage was high on Monday night, but they are now the league leader in seeing opponents send at least 1 extra pass rusher. Second in the league, the Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts. Why is that? Well, they don't really feel super threatened by being exposed on the back end. That, when you get after a quarterback, you've got to feel comfortable, zone coverage or man coverage, that you can hold up or that you can get there. You know, you've got to be able to get there as well. The overall pressure rate, Washington, you know, is actually pretty good. So the offensive line is held up under that highest blitz percentage. In terms of quarterback pressure rate for the season, they're 20th in the league. So not bad. The team that's gotten pressured the most in terms of quarterback pressure rate is the Jets. And, you know, a lot of that has to do with quarterback holding onto the football too long. But, yeah, Washington right now has seen more blitz than any team in the league, percentage-wise, in dropbacks through 6 games. I think that's interesting. You know, I would guess, and I don't have these numbers, that behind it, it's mostly zone coverage. You cannot blitz this guy and play man coverage behind it because he will turn it into a big play with his legs. And I forget those long scrambles he had the other night, if it was zone coverage or man coverage. I'd have to go back and look. But there should be, you know, opportunities against the blitz to make him pay. And they have. They have in his 3 starts. You know, they've made him pay. They made him pay the other night with the touchdown pass to Chris Moore. Was a 6-man pass rush, and they picked it up. By the way, McNichols did a phenomenal job on that play. But I thought that was interesting to see that they are being blitzed at a rate higher than any team in the NFL through their 6 games. And, you know, if I go back to the Mariota games, I'd have to look that up. But Jaden's, you know, the overall percentage is 37.1%. Second in the league, the Eagles at 35.3%. So that's a pretty big disparity. But Jaden's 41.7% blitz rate was the highest for a game that he has started this year. The Packers game, very low. They didn't need to blitz that night. They just manhandled the line of scrimmage, if you recall. They're going to see more of that considering the success that the Bears did have. They picked it up on that Chris Moore touchdown, but on 3rd and 10 at the Bears 39, when they could have iced the game in that situation, they did not pick it up, and Jaden essentially had to throw it away. And, you know, let's see how Cliff adjusts to that. Let's see if Cosme ends up being an addition that helps. Let's see if Terry getting back ends up being a big difference maker from that standpoint. The raw numbers, passing numbers, last 2 weeks for Jaden are fine. You know, Jaden's playing, you know, at a high level at quarterback here in his last 2 starts. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's been excellent. But, you know, with the defense being what it is, especially on Monday night, it's going to have to be flawless, and flawless means you can't turn the ball over, period. I thought that was interesting. I would not have guessed. I knew they blitzed them a lot on Monday night. I didn't know what the numbers were until I looked them up, but I would not have guessed Washington was the most blitz team in the league in terms of percentage of dropbacks. All right. I want you to start thinking about the following question. I want you to describe this team right now after 6 games. This is a fair snapshot now to kind of evaluate the team. Doesn't mean things won't change. Doesn't mean things won't get better with the additions coming off injuries. Doesn't mean things can't get worse. But describe the team in your own words. I don't want a dissertation. 3 or 4 sentences about what you see with this team through 6 games. We're no longer in the super small sample size. We're not at the midway point of the season either. I'll give you my description when we come back. Max will give you his, and then we'll open it up for calls. We'll open up the phone lines right now. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Describe this team after 6 games. You can do it, by the way, saying good offense, bad defense, or you can say not a playoff team, or still a playoff contender, or reliant on getting healthy. Whatever it is, describe our team now that we've got more than a super small sample size. We've got 6 games, 6 very different games, and only 4 of them with the starting quarterback, to be fair. 301-230-0980. 0980 301 230 0980. I do want to tell you about Window Nation and their current offer. Buy two, get two free with nothing owed for 2 full years. So if you want new windows, go to windownation.com, mention my name. They'll come out and give you a free estimate. Doesn't charge you anything. You'll get it in an hour or less. You'll get it when it's convenient for you. You'll find out which windows actually need to be replaced. And then if you decide to move forward with Window Nation, you get 2 free windows with every 2 purchased and nothing owed for 2 full years. They are number 1 in America per Forbes when it comes to window installation companies. They've installed over 3 million windows. They can help you out. They can get you ready for winter and make sure that those cold, annoying drafts, because you've got older windows, are keeping your home cooler than it should be. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Describe Washington right now through 6 games. We don't have a small sample size anymore, but we don't have a large sample size, but we're approaching the midpoint of the season. We are 2.5 games away from the midpoint of the season, 6 games into it. A lot of teams have played just 5. Washington's record is 3-3. That is second in the NFC East, 1 game behind Philadelphia. If you're wondering if the playoffs started today, Washington would not qualify. Their situation right now is that 2 of their 3 wins have come against AFC teams, the Raiders and the Chargers. It's much better when you have 3 losses if all 3 of them came against AFC teams and you were undefeated against NFC teams. They've only won 1 game against the NFC, and that was the opener against the Giants. But it is a very bunched up NFC. Essentially, you go from currently the top 7 teams, which includes the Rams at number 7, to then Atlanta, Minnesota, Chicago, Carolina, all ahead of Washington, based on record and, potential tiebreaker. Long way to go before we have tiebreaker conversations. But what is Washington through 6 games? I want something, as concise as possible. I don't want, a long-winded answer. Somebody comes up to you and says, I haven't seen him yet. Tell me about your team. What is your answer? My answer is, in one sentence, Washington is a playoff contending team in the NFC with a roster that is barely average, but has a way above average quarterback. We understand the significance of quarterback, and so as long as he plays, they will be in every game and have a chance to win enough games to qualify for the playoffs. Biggest concern, that the defense is a major liability. That's my description. What's yours at 301-230-0980? Max, do you have one for me?
Yeah, I've got one. I'll break it down in terms of just teams. Offense, real short, real sweet. They're fine. They go as the quarterback goes. Protection could be better, but that's just kind of how the NFL goes. Offense, fine. Defense, they need lots of improvement almost at every level. Linnell kind of called them Jekyll and Hyde, which I really don't hate as a descriptor. But if you're struggling at almost every level, it doesn't really scream a player issue to me. Something needs to change, and I think DQ might need to get a little bit more hands-on as things go. And with that hands-on approach, then you got to produce more turnovers. So that's my defensive description. Then special teams, immaculate. I will protect Larry Izzo with my life. So that's kind of where we fall in terms of my short descriptors.
All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I would tell you, if you hadn't seen any of the games, this is a playoff contending team in the NFC, but that basically the team overall is average, barely average, but they've got a way above average quarterback. He gives them the chance to win more games than they lose. The defense, by far and away, is the team's biggest weakness, flaw, liability. 301-230-0980. Let's start with our guy Lou in D.C. Lou, go ahead.
What's up, Kevin?
Lou, what's happening?
I gotta disagree, man. I can't say they are a playoff team because the simple fact that I thought that the defense was going to be the I guess our strength to kind of to keep us in the game, but the way they've been playing, I mean, when they play a weak team, the defense get a couple sacks here and there, but when they play a decent team, I mean, even Chicago, they're not that strong. I mean, we could have done a lot of things with them, but it seemed like play calling, Joe Witt and Darren Quinn, when they was a coach with were a coach with Dallas, I mean, they blitz. I mean, they used to blitz us and get all these turnovers and things like that. I don't see any of that over here. I don't see that aggression. And it seems like we just one-dimensional. They depend on Jaden way too many often. And teams are finding out, they just, I don't know, they just not, I can't say they're a playoff team, man. They just, the defense is just not our strength anymore. And it seemed like, especially coming like the.
Well, defense hasn't been the strength at any point, over the last year in 6 games now.
No, with the addition that the guys, I know a couple of guys they hurt, but with the addition that we had, Wise and the other two.
Yeah, Wise is a good point. Bringing up Wise, his loss significant. They wanted to be better on the edge, and we saw Monday night against a team that attacked them on the edge. They don't have anybody that can set an edge because DeAndre Swift is not an upper tier back. He's good. But he shouldn't go for 7.7 yards per carry, period.
Yeah. I think, I appreciate you, Kevin.
Yep. Lou says not a playoff team. Let me just be clear. What I said was Washington is a playoff contending team in the NFC with a roster that is barely average, but it has a way above average quarterback. Let's go to our guy Billy in Chantilly. We missed him yesterday. Billy, can you answer the question? Describe the team after 6 games.
The team, Kevin, good morning. The team is reflective of a general manager who is good at his job but totally messed up the signing of or re-signing or whatever you want to call it of their number one offensive threat in Terry McLaurin. And now we're seeing the results of that bad decision. He just made a bad decision.
He did re-sign him.
And Terry would have been in camp in July instead of September 1 or whatever he got into camp. The offense would have been in step. The offense keeps the defense off the field. You'd probably be 4-2 or 5-1 or 6-0. He screwed up. Adam,
Billy, do you give Terry and his agent any of the blame for that or not?
Terry did not have zero leverage. He had all the leverage. The agent's an idiot. You can't account for idiots when you're a general manager.
He got a crappy deal with all that leverage that you think he had.
He had all the leverage. Terry had all the leverage. We're 3-3. Take a good look at the offense.
Yeah,
that's the leverage. Wins and losses. Kevin,
yeah, well, he didn't turn that. Then they really did a crappy job. I think they had no leverage because he was under contract, and they got a crappy deal with all that leverage. Now that's separate.
We're 3-3.
That's separate from the conversation we're having that you want to have, which is if they had just given him what he wanted, which would have blown out a lot of norms for that particular player, would have been completely undisciplined as an organization, in my opinion, and just given him what he wanted in June, then they would be a better team right now. That's fine if you believe that, and I certainly think that they would be a better team with him versus without him. I don't know how much that injury specifically had to do with him not participating this summer. I can't answer that. I'm not suggesting that it wasn't a role, didn't play a factor in it. I just can't tell you that for sure. And I don't think you can tell me that for sure.
Yeah, well, nobody can. I wish we could, but I know he would have been in camp in July. The part B of the comment is Jaden did get squished up in the fourth quarter of the game. They never showed the replay. Both times he had his knee stuck up underneath him, and every time they went to the replay, they cut it right before Cliff's got to get organized on the offense and get this Jaden out of trouble with all this running nonsense.
Well, they okay.
Jaden was the quarterback of the Bears. The Bears would have won 60-0.
You know what?
Williams can't play.
That's probably true. The one thing though, I know I'm stuck on this, but call me whatever you want to call me. Terry and his agent, maybe it's more so his agent, has a lot of responsibility, in why they did not get this deal done. They were completely delusional as to what his worth was.
Yes.
And with all the leverage you claim he has, I disagree. It's an all-time horrible deal if they actually had the leverage you suggested they had. So,
Adam should have held his nose and got him into camp. He's your number one
but
receiver.
You can't do that, Billy. You can't do that as a first-time general manager with your first big contract negotiation. Go way outside the norm and overpay by miles a player that's entering his age 30 season. I have no problem with how the organization handled it. as I said right from the beginning, they don't have to give him anything. They didn't have to give him anything, and they did.
6 then. We could
He should have signed it sooner. He should have come to the reality that he wasn't worth Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or any of these kind of, receivers that are legitimate superstar receivers. And if he'd come to the reality of that, or if his agent had helped him come to the reality of that, he would have been in camp a lot sooner. Thanks for the call. But that is separate from, if he had gotten into camp, would the situation have been different? Maybe. I'm not going to dispute that. Maybe he wouldn't have gotten hurt. Maybe early on there would have been more chemistry. I don't know. Let's go to Brad in Frederick. Brad, to someone who hasn't seen any of these 6 games, now that we've got more than just a small sample size, describe our team.
Kevin, how you been, buddy?
Brad, what's going on, man? Good to hear your voice.
Hey, man. You as well. So, correct me, we scored 26 or what, 28 a game? What are we averaging? Something like that on offense? 26?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I'll look it up.
Ridiculous. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, anyway, so I would describe that. I'll answer your question first. I would describe it as a non-playoff team and still in rebuild.
We're averaging 26.3 points per game. That's 7th in the league in scoring.
Terry is not a problem. The offense isn't a problem. So anyway, I would describe them as a non-playoff team and still rebuilding, as I thought they would be, which I'm not really surprised. A little disappointed, but not surprised. So I want to go back to yesterday. You took a call and you were talking to him about, would you rather have Trey Hendrickson or X wide receiver? And I can't remember wide receiver's name. And the answer is always, we need more offensive power. We need more offensive power. But to your point, Trey Hendrickson is the answer. What this organization didn't do in the offseason is give their franchise quarterback what he really needed to succeed, and that's a defense. And you just said it, a superstar quarterback and elevate talent around him, which he has done. But you can't stop anybody. In the NFL, you're never going to be successful, and they have not done that yet. They're the oldest team, and we're inherited a lot of mess, and they have to rebuild that side of the ball. But it's never going to get better, Kevin.
They tried, though. They recognized, Brad, that they had a problem defensively. They went out and got bigger with Kinlaw. They got an edge guy in Wise, and they lost him. By the way, Goldman didn't play the other night. He's actually played well. It's very possible they missed Eddie Goldman, believe it or not, the other night. They tried. They were interested in Hendrickson, but the price was too high, and ultimately Cincinnati wasn't dealing him. So, and they drafted a corner in the second round that had, kind of a first-round grade. So, you're right. They did not add like a game-wrecking, edge, pass-rushing kind of player that could have elevated this defense. But I don't know that there was one to be had unless you wanted them to draft it.
So I agree. What they did is say, let's get Tunzel, let's get Debo, let's build this offense, let's give them his high power, so we can score 45 a game and we'll outscore our bad defense. They did try to improve, Kevin, but they went to, let's say, Sam's Club. They went to this, we'll go in this route, right? We'll overpay a Ken Law guy that no one really knows what he is really.
By the way, he's been good.
He's been good, but to your point, they don't have great.
Yeah.
That roster on that side of the ball is not good, and there's not great talent on that, and they're old. So it's just, they are still, and they will get it. I don't have faith. They will do it. I'm not saying they won't. They just haven't done it yet, and there's still a long way to go. And in this league, on the defensive side of the ball, if you can't stop anybody, you can't ask him to be Superman every single game and win these games 35-34. It's not a recipe for success. And you know that. I mean, I'll tell you that. But.
Yeah, the only thing is you and I probably said this to each other all last season, and they just kept overcoming it. But, and I pointed this out, and I think everybody's pointed this out, I'm not the only one, is last year they were overcoming their terrible defense against Spencer Rattler, Jake Hayner, Tommy DeVito, Cooper Rush, Andy Dalton. The list goes on and on, right, in terms of who they face.
We're not schedule people, right? We're not schedule people.
I know, but
I'm not going to look at a schedule. But you have to account for what your schedule is and the talent you were going to face. They did not account for that defensively to play the talent that they're playing to win these games like last year. You're not going to win on Hail Marys and block and this and that and these ways that they were winning and playing your point, Rattlers, DeVitos. You have to account for that and know you're playing this elevated talent. This is the NFL. And they just didn't.
I mean, and they got lucky, right? A couple of times. They played a banged up Giants 100%. Team that still had Russell Wilson in there. 100%. They played a banged up Chargers team that actually had talent, at skill positions, but was a mess on their offensive line. I'm sorry?
Right. And they squeaked in.
Yeah.
And they squeaked into the playoffs, right? They got in off of that. Well, that's not – you have to account for that not happening and playing better talent. They just don't have it. And they'll get it. They just don't have it.
All right, thanks. Good to hear your voice. Let's go to Aveen. Aveen, go ahead. 6 games in. Describe the team to somebody who hasn't seen the 6 games.
Hey, Kevin. I'll say not yet fully operational, and it starts with Jaden Daniels, the quarterback. I totally agree with you in saying that his season didn't really get started till midway through the second quarter of that Chargers game. And since then, aside a couple of, brain fart turnovers, those might be the 2 worst plays he makes this year. He's looked awesome. I think he looks better this season than last season. I think he's more aggressive. I'm buying into that offseason hype that his velocity is up on throws. I feel like I see that on the seam balls. So I think he looks awesome. I think everything else on the offense is trending upward. I mean, Terry and Cosme have been out. Those are 2 of our best offensive players. Noah Brown's coming back too. But it's not just that. It's the younger players. The younger players are growing into the offense. They're making more and more contributions. Jaden's trusting them more. So it just seems to me like things are trending up with the offense. And the offense, despite all of this, all the injuries, Jaden being start-stop, really a season not getting started till late, they're still a top 10 offense. This is totally trending towards being a top 5 juggernaut offense with a superstar quarterback. So with that, the defense, 2 things I'll say about that. I'm a bit more lenient on the Bears game than a lot of people have been in you. 2 key things is third down defense and holding teams to field goals. They still gave up 3 of 11, third and fourth downs to the Bears, held them to 2 touchdowns. One of them was on a short field, quick turnaround turnover, and the other was kind of a fluky play to Swift, 55-yard touchdown. So that's the key. We're going to be one of these.
Well, that fluky play has been a part of the problem. Those big chunk plays, the big explosives.
Right, but that play, it's like there's 2 guys in position to make a tackle.
Yeah, but we've seen them run into each other. We've seen the issues on that back end. They've got to fix that. I'm not saying that they can't fix it, but they haven't yet. And real quickly, and I'm going to let you finish because Eveen's always a sharp caller. You go back and you look at some of those third downs. First of all, Roma Dunze, that's a touchdown. That's not a legal formation, period. It just isn't. And Zacchaeus is still running if he catches the football. A lot of that was self-inflicted, by Chicago and not necessarily defensive forced. The Luvu tip was a great play on 4th down. And they had a couple of opportunities. Sanders still had an opportunity. They got to come up with those. They're going to have to turn some of those opportunities against a quarterback like Caleb Williams, who was inaccurate, Aveen, because they're not going to get that against Dak, not going to get that against Mahomes, not going to get that maybe against, Goff. They did in the playoff game. Okay. But you got to turn, if you're going to be giving up chunk play and now maybe big chunk plays, on the ground, you've got to get a couple of takeaways a game. You have to. Or bad calls to go against the other team, which Chicago had Monday night. What else?
Yep. But just my point is the margin of error is high with the defense just because of how good the offense is. To me, anytime the defense doesn't give up a touchdown, that's a win.
So fair.
Just hold it.
Fair. No matter how it happens, whether it's them or the opponent.
Right. So, like, when you play the Bills or Lions, you tell yourself, we're not going to win this game kicking field goals. That's what Washington's going to be like. Like, this is – I don't know how you feel, but this feels like a top 5 offense, juggernaut offense with a superstar quarterback. And that gives you a lot of room for error on defense. So I still think it's possible, to win a lot of games, string a lot of wins playing that way with a high-octane juggernaut offense and a defense that makes enough splash plays, holds out the end zone enough times where you can string together wins.
Yeah, I hope, though, we haven't had enough of the splash plays defensively. If this was a team that was just, somewhere in the top half of the league in takeaways, it would be a massive game changer for the results in the win total for this team this year. They've got 3 takeaways in 6 games. Only 2 teams have fewer, and one of those teams has played 1 less game. So you've got to come up with something that covers up the fact that you're probably not good enough to just line it up and shut teams down. Not good teams. Anyway, thank you, Aveen, for that. If you're on hold, stay there. We do have a line open if you want to weigh in. 301-230-0980. Describe the team after 6 games. It's more than a small sample size now. We're 6 games into the season. They're 3-3. How would you describe them to somebody that hasn't seen any of the 6? Take your calls. Continue with them. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980, and the team980.com.
I don't know if you heard this after the game last night, but Jaden was very forthcoming, saying he lost focus there on that handoff to Bill with 3 minutes left in the game. Was that surprising to you that he would say that he lost focus in that moment, knowing his track record of being so calm, cool, and collected in those moments?
No, it doesn't surprise me. It actually, probably enhances what I feel about him. That's just like him, to go through those spots. And I'm not surprised that he said that. I had a text that we exchanged today. I won't share that, but just about, how important it is, how he plays. And, I'm certain he'll learn from it.
Dan Quinn yesterday. I thought that was an interesting answer to that. I think what he's saying, the obvious answer, I think, in terms of reading between the lines, is Jaden's a guy that takes accountability. Doesn't surprise him. He takes accountability. He's not a guy that would throw anybody under the bus. Yeah, not that there was any bus, throwing under opportunity anyway. It's not like the snap was not good. I also thought there was a part of it in there that speaks to, hey, we gotta be, a little bit more buttoned up in these situations, a little less kind of laid back casual. Not that I want him worked up. He's smooth and nothing seems to faze him, but just a little bit more, you've got to take that extra step. That is a crucial situation. I'll mention this again for those that didn't hear it earlier in the show. I don't think they get the first down, even if the exchange and the handoff is a successful one. There was penetration and it was quick, and that's why the Bears immediately fell on the football and had the opportunity for the recovery, rather than Krosky Merritt or even Jaden having the opportunity to recover it. Because he was in pistol, he was. That bad exchange was, 3-4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I also just wanted to address what Billy in Chantilly said, that Jaden was, banged up and wasn't the same after the roughing the passer low, on Brisker when he came in on the knee. I've now watched every play since. And the play that indicates to me that he was not hurt is the play before the botched handoff fumble. It's a 2nd and 9 at midfield, and Montez Sweat gets immediate pressure. I guess they forgot to block him. I don't know if it's play action to McNichols, and maybe Bates is supposed to chip Sweat, but he doesn't. And Jaden makes Sweat miss badly in the backfield and then takes off and scrambles and nearly gets the first down, diving for it, which set up the 3rd and 1. The next play was the botched handoff. So I don't think we're going to be like, if we're going to have a surprise today with Jaden on the injury report. I don't see that coming, at least based on the way he played after. Yeah, we'll see. Quinn will certainly be talking. All right, let's get back to the phone lines. What'd you say, Max?
He's speaking right now, actually.
Oh, Quinn is?
Yes.
Do you want to go to that, and then we'll come back to these calls?
Sure. He's just starting the presser now, so we can kick it up and
Let's
get it
go to
hot
Dan
going.
Quinn in Ashburn.
He's still working back from a knee injury, but we are glad to have him here. So all that said, glad to get rolling with you guys.
With Noah, what happened with the groin? Was there a setback, or did something happen while he was practicing that re-injured it? And I guess why not put him on IR before this point?
Yeah, well, I would say it wasn't a setback. It just hasn't responded, quite the way that it needs to. So I wouldn't call it a setback. Hindsight's 20/20. I think the main thing is, man, we're gonna get him right. That's the ultimate goal, to get there. So we know that means 4 more weeks, and the guy's working incredibly hard at it. And so we want to make sure hit all the marks that we can with him.
Then what's the plan for Terry this week?
He'll practice this week, and I'll have a better sense where we're going, because today is going to be more at a jog through pace where we're not, fully, speed up and going, but that'll be more as we get into tomorrow. But, I'll have a better assessment after we go through some full speed, routes and movements to see where he's at. But I'm excited where he's trending.
With Noah, is this something that would require surgery, or is this just more time, rest, recovery?
More time, and just we're going to really push it, make sure the recovery's right, the strength is right, and just, kind of go through all of it to make sure he's really ready.
Have you had a chance to talk to him as he's dealt with all this? I mean, it's been
I will today. I
kidney,
didn't
knee,
this morning. I have obviously previously, but not specifically today, but I will this afternoon. Like, he's one of these competitors. He takes it hard. He cares so much. He loves it. And so, moments like now are hard because of who the competitor is. But the good news is that, let's put the plan in place that we can absolutely, nail it to get him back. And that's what we'll aim to do.
Dan, is there any concern with Armstrong and the hamstring going forward?
I think there's always concern in and out, and he kind of showed, man, I'm going to battle through it to go. We won't really hit our speed stuff till tomorrow, David, so I think I'll have a better shot today. He's able to do the walks and that kind of stuff today, so I'm encouraged by that. But until you load it, go. The good news is, like I said, he's in, he's out, but meaning coming back and forth into the game. But I'll have a better feel for him tomorrow as we get a little bit more movement.
As you dig in or dug into kind of the issues with starts, do you go all the way into what time are we getting to the stadium? What do they do in pregame? What are our pregame drills looking like? Are you going that deep into it?
I do. And I also want to dig in, to the leaders and say, what are some things that we need to do to hit it? And it's not a score as much as an attitude, a mindset to go. So I want to make sure I'm clear on that, because if you only base it just on that, I think you could miss it. And so it's not that. And I liked the intentness getting ready. And like I said, the offense had a long drive. We turned the ball over at the end of it, but it is important. And so it's more collaboration to say, is there anything else, we need to do and hit differently? I've had those conversations, and I'll continue to tweak it until we get it exactly right.
Coach, how have you seen opposing defenses change their game plans when facing you guys with Terry and Noah's absence?
It depends, I think, where on the field some. I think it's also their matchup too, in terms of they want to play more man-to-man or doing things differently. The run game, not counting last game into that space, but I think that's been one of the areas we've started to really, hit our marks. And that alone changes some things, because having the ability to go down, stop the run, some of the ones, I think that could be as big a factor as anything. But for sure, that's part of it. But you just have to navigate how you go and who you're there. Like, there's a way to win every game. You just have to go dig in and find it, and it might not be the same every week. And we're equipped to do that.
Over here. Your defense obviously has had some issues, and you're facing one of the best offenses in the league. What has been their psyche since Monday night, and how much does pride play a factor in you guys getting better?
Yeah, I don't also want to portray the sky as falling either. There's some things that I like about how we're doing some things on third down. We're not getting the ball enough, Chick, honestly. And that's one part of playing good defense. We're not hitting our tackling, to the space that I think is the standard that we've set. But we've also had some moments where we know what good can look like and what it does. So we want to make sure we're capturing that. Meetings wise, it's tense, it's tight, like it should be when you're, trying to dig in and find the right answers. And that's what's cool about this group, that it's not somebody pointing or, doing that. It's, hey man, let's go through our thing together and how we would go about it. So you're right. It's a great challenge with Dallas and, weapons they have. And I think Dak's honestly hitting, his marks at a high level right now. That's what the tape tells me so far. And we're looking forward to the challenge.
Just to take a step back to Terry, what was the biggest kind of step forward that he took last week, and what do you need to see from him specifically this week if he's going to play? We call him like a game simulation, where you run different routes, you work different movements. Sometimes in a rehab, you could see, it's predicted where you're going to go. And so off schedule throws, how to do different things. So that's a good step when you're moving forward. So that's part of the process, like in your return to play, to like simulate more closely related plays. So the fact that we're moving in that direction, that's a good sign. And then broadly, when making decisions about whether or not somebody goes on IR, like obviously this would be, I think, his 4th week. How do you guys go through that decision-making process?
Through the medical team, and lean into what, the guidelines that they want to set and how to go, how long is a predicted rehab, of this type of nature, going to take. It's not exact, that I can tell you. Not everybody, heals in the same way and the same speeds with the different types of injuries. So if it was exact, it'd be super easy to do. And so then there's all sorts of other factors. Did it respond? Did it not? And where are we at? So you just try to play it as close as you can, knowing that it's not always going to be on this timeline or that. So I think what I've learned is just, man, have patience and listen, to the player. They know it best. They really do. They're going to push it hard to see where they can go to, but they know it best. And we just follow those guidelines. We got a strict, procedure that we go through. So we just try to stay connected to that and follow and listen.
From Sam Cosmi, with him kind of being on the cusp here. I know you have until next week to activate him.
Yeah, I liked what I saw from him last week. First padded work. He got a lot of reps, and we expect to do that kind of same, process with him this week. But it was a hell of a start for him, to get back and get rolling. He's really put the work in. So, anticipating seeing that continue and trajectory going up.
Been listening to Dan Quinn. What you missed at the beginning, but probably gathered from some of the questions, Noah Brown to injured reserve. So that locks him out for the next several weeks. Sure, the question can be asked, why not earlier and have, that roster spot for somebody else? You heard him explain that. With respect to Terry, making progress, he'll have more of an update towards the end of the week. Dorrance Armstrong, hurt his hamstring during the game and was out. And, we had the sideline report about that. Then he came back in and got the half a sack. He was credited with half a sack. Now, that was a Caleb Williams holding the ball too long. Max told me at some point today, and I don't think we've said it on the air, you said that PFF had Caleb Williams as the lowest graded offensive player for the Bears.
Yes, he graded out to a 46.1.
Yeah, and look, there were just so many opportunities out there for him, I thought, and his team let him down. The Zacchaeus play we've talked about ad nauseum at this point. I mean, that's a massive play. He made some plays too. That big 3rd and 5 to Loveland, it's wide open. It's a pitch and catch that literally any father and son or father and daughter or mother and daughter could make in the backyard. It was that easy. The defense was that, non-resistant, but God, he's inaccurate. And Aikman must have pointed it out, 5 times during the game. Man, he's got this here. He just doesn't come back to it, doesn't see it. And people were wide open all over the field. With that said, he was 17 of 29 for 252. That kind of tells you something right there. In a game that wasn't, garbage yards, obviously, at the end. Sometimes you got 250 plus because you're down 3 touchdowns and the other team's sitting back in prevent. That's not what we had on Monday night, clearly. But the fact that he was the lowest graded player, for whatever it's worth, I know some of you feel the same way I do about PFF, which is it's a tool. It's interesting information. It's certainly not the end-all, be-all. But for him to be the lowest graded offensive player and throw for 252, a touchdown without one interception. He did have a turnover-worthy throw. Sanders still should have had that one. Tells you just how bad Washington was defensively. Tell me real quickly, if you have that PFF thing opened up, the grades, what about their offensive lineman, Darnell Wright in particular? Did you look that up for me or not? Because I thought their offensive line was really good.
He graded top 5. Let me pull it. Best offensive grades, Darnell Wright, 75.7.
Okay, so that's well above average in the PFF 60s average.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Chiefs guard that they signed? Tooney.
Top offensive grade on the team. He graded an 88.
Yeah, their offensive line was good.
Real good. They did a lot.
Really good the other night.
Did a lot in this offseason. It's worked out.
All right, what else did he say? By the way, they were working out Treylon Burks. Remember him, the first round Tennessee receiver from Arkansas. man, Burks was one of those interesting guys. He was big. Remember Treylon coming out of Arkansas? That's the Jahan Dotson draft? Is Burks the...
I believe so. 2019, right?
Well, no, 22 is that. Let's see.
Drafted.
Yeah, the 22. The 22 draft is the Jahan Dotson draft, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and Burks was in that draft. So you had a lot of wide receivers, right, in that draft. Here it is. I've got the list in front of me now. You had Drake London go 1, Garrett Wilson go 2, Olave after the trade with New Orleans with Washington went 3 in terms of wide receivers. London was 8 overall, Wilson was 10 overall, Olave was 11 overall, Jamison Williams was 12 overall to Detroit, Jahan Dotson 16 overall to Washington, and then Treylon Burks 18 overall to Tennessee. Those were the first rounders in that particular draft. I think in watching Burks, who was a bigger receiver, he and London were probably the two biggest receivers in that draft, height-wise, I'm guessing. Washington was in love with Drake London in that draft, just so you know. They were in love with London in that draft, and they were very much in love with the offensive lineman that went to the Seahawks. Charles Cross. Those were the two players. Had they fallen to 11, they would have never made the trade. I don't know why they didn't love Kyle Hamilton, but whatever. So Burks, to me, first of all, no quarterback, right? For the most part, Will Levis for part of the time. He just never looked super interested, and he missed a lot of games because of injuries. He just looked like one of those guys that always was going through the motions. But former first-round pick, they were working him out today. What else came out of that? Drake Jackson, they actually signed, the defensive end that's coming off the terrible patellar tendon injury. He's a 49er, so obviously familiarity with Adam Peters. Yeah. And then Cosme there at the end. Cosme's close. Terry's close. Hopefully in time for Dallas. By the way, CeeDee Lamb is close. He could be back for Sunday's game. All right. Those of you on hold, I appreciate you holding. We'll get to your calls. The question that we're getting to is just describe this team through 6 games. It's more of a small sample size now. We got more to kind of judge. We're getting to that point where we kind of are starting to figure out what they have. It'll never be completely figured out. It's the nature of the NFL. But how do you describe our team after 6 games to someone who hasn't seen any of the 6 games? 301-230-0980. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to your calls next.
All right, quick little here's what's happening on Wednesday, October 15th. The Washington Commanders are bringing in former Titans wide receiver Treylon Burks for a workout. Burks was released by the Titans after suffering a collarbone injury this preseason. Now he is fully healed and visiting potential suitors to postseason baseball. The Dodgers, they beat the Brewers 5-1. Yoshinobu Yamamoto throws all 9 innings, giving up only 1 solo shot from Jackson Chourio in the first inning, and the Dodgers bats rolled from there. Again, they win 5-1. The Caps, they get the overtime win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Logan Thompson saved 17 of 19 shots he faced. Jacob Chikrin with the overtime winner at the end to put the Caps over the Lightning 3-2. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type of the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
I would describe the team through 6 games this way. Washington is a playoff contending team in the NFC with a roster that is barely average, and that's being kind, but a way above average quarterback. 301-230-0980. How would you describe it? Lap's been on hold for a while. Lap, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? Hey,
What's up,
good
Lap?
show, bro.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just think the defense is bad. We really don't have an identity on this team. I think it can be the run game if we do it more. It looks like we're gonna have to play superhero ball again with JD5 having to carry us, and that was my point I made to you yesterday about. I think this is a playoff team, especially with JD5 and Terry. We're definitely dangerous if we get to the postseason. But in the meantime, with the schedule being tough, it's going to be hard. And my last point is, if you look at the Bills and certain teams now, you know, they're used to playing a tough schedule because they always, you know,
Right.
making the playoffs.
Right.
We haven't made the playoffs like that with this regime. So I think year 3 or 4, Jaden is going to really take it to a whole nother level, man. And he's going to get used to playing some of these defenses like you were breaking down the blitz percentage, you know what I'm saying, for us.
Yeah.
And, I think he's going to be good, man. So we'll see, man. I want to get Dallas. Let's get this win. Go from there. And it's going to be tough because the schedule is tough and everybody in the conference is tough, even at the league. You can't sleep on nobody.
Thanks, Lap.
So, yeah.
Appreciate it. Let's go to Athen in Annapolis. Athen, go ahead. How do you describe this team after 6 games?
They're just very average with a good quarterback. And, you know, last year, Kevin, it was about, well, we had Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juste, and Michael Davis in the secondary. Well, what's the excuse now that we've upgraded with Lattimore and you had Sanders still with the year under his belt and Amos? It's just that they're underachieving. The Falcons and Bears are not potent offenses like the Bills, the Eagles, and the Chiefs, and that's the frustrating part for me.
The Falcons may be.
They're still. Well, I don't think they're elite though. You know, or just up. It should have been up and down the field the way it was against us.
Right.
But
No, I would certainly agree with you in the moment. And they had scored 0 points the week before. So, yeah, your point's well taken. I just think that ultimately Atlanta's got some legitimate star, you know, skill position players.
Well, yeah, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, I think, in years to come. I still don't like Raheem much as a coach, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that.
They're underachieving for the town. I know the pass rush is either hit or miss, but you're underachieving with significantly, at least name-wise, upgraded talent in the secondary. And from what I hear from Chris Russell and Linnell, it doesn't sound like they practice very hard. I hear these practices are kind of like powder puff sessions, and that really makes me question at least Witt and Quinn, because if you have the same communication problems every week, I mean, Colston Loveland is not Tony Gonzalez. Alameda Zacchaeus is not Jerry Rice, and these wide open receivers again on Monday. They had 500 yards against us.
Yeah.
You know, why? Why is the question? You got better talent in the secondary.
You know, that question keeps coming back to me. It's a lot of things. But to me, like at some point, if you lose 38-35 to the Cowboys, if you beat the Cowboys 38-35, you know, if you start getting lit up on the regular because, you know, you didn't get lit up by the teams that weren't very good or the teams that were banged up when you played them. But if that happens, I can't imagine there won't be some change. Might be personnel wise, or it might be more significant. It could be play calling or something to that effect. I agree with you. I don't know what the answer to the why is, though, Athen. I don't. But it seems to me that the players that they have, they don't have a great defensive player. You know, they don't have a great front seven game wrecker. They don't have a great cover guy. But they've got some good talent, and yet we're starting to see against the teams that are just okay a lot of what we saw last year, even though it manifests itself a little bit differently. Although on Monday night, it felt like last year, seeing the edge runs by DeAndre Swift. Let's go to Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, go ahead. How do you describe our team after 6 games?
Hey, buddy. Let me just go back to Monday night because I didn't get the call yesterday. Kevin, I'm still pissed that we let that opportunity get away. I know we had 3 turnovers. Should have won that game. Very winnable game. That being said, we're just average right now, Kevin, as a team after 6 weeks. And the main reason why we're average because our defense sucks. We've been talking about the same thing for almost a year and a half now. Okay? It's the same thing week after week after week. I'm sick of it. We've got major gaps in our defensive scheme, man. I know you've seen some film already. One of them plays Monday night, a receiver was running a shallow cross and Lattimore had him, and then he passed him on to our middle linebacker. Bobby didn't know he was crossing, and he was playing middle linebacker. So he just gave up on the route and passed him on. It was a chunk play. Kevin, we're just doing the same things over and over again, and I'm sick of it. And we're never going. You said something yesterday, because I listen, like I always do. And you made a comment yesterday. It'd be nice if the freaking defense could stand up and make a play to help the offense out, okay? They got to just step up every now and then, Kevin. It's the same thing. It's going to be the same thing Sunday, Kevin. We're playing an elite offensive team. That's going to be probably a shootout. We don't have – do we have the personnel scheme? Something's wrong, and it needs to be fixed because it's the same thing week after week after week, buddy.
The only thing that I will say, Bobby, I don't think that this team lacks the effort or the urgency. I think they look confused too often. That's the thing for me. And you want them to play fast all the time. There have been a couple of games where it's like, all right, that's great. But they were against Russell Wilson's Giants and Geno Smith's Raiders. And the Chargers just were a mess along the offensive line. So, yeah, no, I hear you. Let's go to Paulie. Paulie, go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing, man?
What's up?
To the W. Ain't nothing much, man. Hey, I'm going to say this. If I was describing this team to somebody, I would say the offense is fine. All right? The offense is fine. As much as I don't necessarily agree with Kingsbury and his his style, it's fine because you have Jaden. All right? And we could win with the offense. Defensive-wise, they bipolar. They're bipolar, and the coaching staff is in denial of what they have on the field. And not only that, they're getting out-coached. They're getting out-coached week in and week out. And it's basically because I said they're in denial. I said they're in denial and they're stubborn because they're not making any changes, no adjustments. Like Bobby just said, it's the same problems from last year. And you haven't made it. Don't tell me about the old guys you brought in. That's another problem. You're playing too many of these old guys. I'd rather lose with young guys with some athleticism and some speed than with these old guys. They're not going to get it. They're not getting any better. They are who they are. So
yeah,
what did we try to take away from the Bears on Monday night?
I don't know. I mean,
exactly.
in going back and looking at some of those things at the end, it's like, why didn't we just load up the box, crowd the line of scrimmage, set the edge with 2 guys, and make sure that they didn't bust a run? That was the most frustrated I've been watching the team this year. Was that last final drive? And I don't want, and by the way, we're going to hear the coordinators tomorrow. I got to run, Paulie. We're going to hear the coordinators tomorrow. And I'm going to be very interested in Joe Witt because 2 weeks ago after the Atlanta game, we got 6-minute answers about how people can't wear capes and people got to start doing their jobs. And I said, he might be right. And you can get away with that once when you get torched. If he comes back tomorrow and puts it all on the players again, even if he's right, it's not the way to go because that was a pathetic defensive performance Monday night, especially with the game on the line after your quarterback made a mistake, like the first in 20 games after bailing you out, and you let DeAndre Swift run untouched for 34 yards into chip shot field goal range. Back tomorrow. Chris Russell next.